Welcome to Aqui, Alla, Here and There, a podcast that explores the history, creativity, and cultural contributions of Mexican and Chicano artists working across borders, generations, and identities. I'm your host, Dr. Martina Ayala, cultural producer, educator, and lifelong advocate for the preservation and promotion of Latino arts and culture. This podcast is about memory, creativity, and cultural continuity. It is about the stories behind artists who shape our communities and the cultural expressions that carry our histories forward. For our very first episode, I am honored to speak with Eugene Rodriguez, an artist whose work moves across multiple worlds: visual art, fashion design, education, and community cultural work. Eugene's creative practice reflects the depth and complexity of Chicano identity while also bringing forward powerful conversations around queer identity, cultural heritage, and artistic expression. He is also an educator who has shaped generations of young artists, reminding us that art is not just about aesthetics. It is about voice, representation, and community memory. Today, we will talk about his artistic journey, the influence that shaped him, the intersection of Chicano and LGBTQ identity in his work as a professor and mentor, and his upcoming museum exhibition. Most importantly, we will explore why his work matters now for culture, for memory, and for future generations. Eugene, welcome to Aqui y Allá.
Thank you, Martina. It's an honor.
Now, in this segment, we're going to explore the origins and your early influences. Let's begin at the beginning. Tell us about where you grew up and what kind of cultural environment shaped you.
So I was born in Oxnard, California in 1957. I'm the son of sharecroppers, Pedro and Matilde Rodriguez. Originally from the Central Valley in near Modesto, and they then moved down. They then moved down to Oxnard in the early 50s to work with my grandparents, Eulalia Longoria and Pedro Guzman, who were going to be strawberry sharecroppers in Oxnard. So that's the environment that I grew up in. It's also the time of Lyndon B. Johnson's The Great Society. So there was, I'm a public school product. I do remember that my grandparents, Pedro and Eulalia, had bought a house across from the tracks. They originally lived in La Colonia, on the other side of the tracks, with mostly African-American and Latinos, Mexican-Americans. And then they bought a house on the other side of the track. So our neighborhood was pretty mixed, wanting to be middle class, but with the salary of a working class parents, which was hard. So that's how I grew up. Cultural influences. Mostly my father was a mechanic for the machines that worked in the fields. My mother didn't work. We were six children. So one salary fed all of us. Very, very different from now. So that's how I grew up in Oxnard.
When did you first realize that art would be an important part of your life?
Kindergarten. I remember, I can see it right now, Mrs. Flint was our teacher, and finger painting was really what was like, wow, this is great. Being able to make a mess, colors. But I also remember as a child doing lots of small things at home, these little things that we were given to, you had to thread the yarn through. So maybe that addicted me to sewing. I don't know. Cartoons as well, just watching them being mesmerized by the colors. This is Bugs Bunny, Donald Duck, Slowpoke Rodriguez, which I'd never understood because I didn't really like, wow, that doesn't look like us. But all of that was kind of visually, I was absorbing all of it.
And how did growing up within Chicano culture influence the themes or imagery that appear in your work today?
I don't think I had a class in high school. I think freshman year, and it was Introduction to Theater, and the same teacher, Mr. Penhollow, had a film criticism class. And I think this really kind of turned me on to be able to look at our world through the eyes of an artist and the eyes of a critic, because that's what the two classes were. You made art, we did theater, and then we also watched films and then talked about them and critiqued them from the director's point of view, the storyline. So we watched, Raisin in the Sun. We didn't really see any Chicano culture other than not until Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers Movement came through Oxnard, because the movement did come through, and then the Delano grape strike, all of that kind of political aesthetic culture kind of came all at one time.
Many artists talk about the importance of place. What role did your community play in your development as an artist?
That's a big question, because I think for a long time I was ashamed of being brown and being poor and being the son of farm workers, because at that time it was extremely, Bewitched was on TV, Leave It to Beaver, very white middle class culture, which I knew nothing about. That wasn't my milieu. That wasn't how when I looked around, I didn't see that anywhere. Unless we drove to the north side of town, which was very, very manicured lawns and all white. And this is in the 60s, so I didn't really understand class, any of that. So for me, the importance of place is now really just beginning to feel comfortable. Even going to my undergrad as well as my graduate work in terms of the art world and arts training, all of that I feel kind of gets pushed down to assimilate into this product, which I would consider a corporate product now, of if you want to participate in the arts, this is what it is. This is where you find your place. But what if your place isn't there? Which it wasn't. So that for me, after my training ending in the 90s, now with this exhibit that's coming up, I really feel as though I understand where I came from, its importance for me emotionally, psychologically, and then in the world that we're living in today, extremely important to show that the world is not only about the 1%. There are many rich stories, many, many lives that need to be highlighted other than just that segment of the population.
Now we're going to go into segment 2. Identity, Chicano culture, and the LGBTQ experience. Eugene, your work sits at a powerful intersection of identities. Chicano, artist, educator, and LGBTQ community member. How have those identities shaped your artistic voice?
Wow, big question. I'll go with the Chicano first. Having Chicano history classes some in high school and then in college, mostly at San Francisco State, having a professor that we had talking all about exactly this question. I came to understand my own background regarding being working class, being brown, son of farm workers. And it really wasn't until then that I had heard all of that talked about in a way that obviously I'm in college and absorbing this, reading this, writing this, talking about all of this as who this society wants to highlight, who we are supposed to be as quote unquote Americans. And then what if you aren't that? How do you speak about all of that? That really was my cue, my clue, my chance to say, oh, this is what I want to say. Because I think for so long, that feeling of shame about where you came from, about who you were and didn't look like Leave It to Beaver or the Donna Reed Show. And this country still has problems with that, right? But I think being able to go through to school, to college, and understand all of that, read about it, write about it, talk about it, see other brown people similar to you partaking in the conversation, partaking in the culture, I think was extremely influential for me. So in terms of being able to identify as Chicano, that's where it started. In terms of LGBTQ, that's another story that is the personal side, the personal experience, moving to Hollywood, very fast culture, Sunset Boulevard and Vine, all of that. I'm from Oxnard. I'm the son of farm workers. I am not Joe Buck from Midnight Cowboy, but I did see a lot of Joe Bucks from Midnight Cowboy on the streets, and they were of all colors: brown, black, white, Asian. Joe Buck comes in many colors, but it was a definite education. I met somebody early in the 70s going to the LGBTQ center in Hollywood. The whole episode of Sergeant Leonard Matlovich in the 1970s, coming out in the military on TV, then going for therapy in Hollywood, moving down to Hollywood. All of that was a huge education, a whole nother world. But also, it included class, racism, and definitely about being the son of a farm worker was part of all of that milieu, and the fights, the discussions, the prejudices continued, the misogyny against women in the clubs in the 70s. So that was really kind of how I all that got taken in the 70s. But it wasn't until I went to college in the mid 80s and then 90s later to kind of make sense of all of it and then turn it into what I wanted to say as an artist. And
did you ever experience any, as you were coming with your, as you were finding your voice and and navigating these different identities, did you ever experience any resistance to the work that you showed that depicted your experience, or what was the reception of people?
I think by the time, so I'm coming out in the 70s. That was a hard time. That is where I experienced what you're talking about in terms of my own quote unquote community, the queer community. I wasn't mature enough to understand all of the prejudices that I was living through regarding class, skin color, misogyny, right? But I experienced it. But it wasn't talked about. It was just the experience, and it was painful to see all of that happening. A lot of the queers, white, brown, women, all of that conversation, all those arguments were hard. There was really no language yet to kind of make sense of all of it. Then after college and then starting to make work, there was still some resistance when I was in my undergrad as well as graduate studies that the work was, I guess you would say, not deemed professional enough. You fall back on marketing words, which was to say, we don't really want to look at that work. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. And I'm still at this point insecure to think maybe they're right. Maybe quote unquote tone it down. Maybe move on to something else. Because I think, like a lot of art students, you want to fit in to what is quote unquote being told to market, right? And then later on, I begin to see I don't have to do that. Yeah.
You started to become more confident in your voice.
Yeah, definitely.
So what has it meant to you personally to create work that reflects the queer identity within the Chicano cultural space?
I can honestly say at this point now, it's I enjoy it. It's much more because it is a part of who I am, and I feel much more confident, like you said, about being able to express ideas. It feels good that finally being able to work that I respect, I understand. That took a long time, and it didn't happen without support from mentors, definitely.
Yes, which takes us to, historically, LGBTQ voices within the Chicano cultural movements have sometimes been invisible or underrepresented. How do you see your work contributing to expanding that narrative?
I think Amalia Mesa Baines was a big supporter of mine early on while I was in graduate school. And then also Guillermo Gomez Peña also chose a work that I did right out of graduate school for an installation in New York City. Having those experiences with those people who I respect highly was a big boost for my confidence, also for my ego to say I can experiment, I can color outside the lines, and I know there's somebody there that I can talk to with that experimentation. That isn't, you would think that art is always supporting that kind of art. It's, I think for the most part, the corporate art world is extremely conservative, and a lot of that stuff is, to me, mediocre.
Mm-hmm. I see. So what do you hope younger LGBTQ Chicano artists take away from seeing your work and your journey?
The work that I'm doing now is really about communication, and I think my work has always been about communication, but particularly with my grandparents that we lived with, Eulalia and Pedro. So I would say that I would push and encourage younger artists to be able to communicate all that they see is part of their experience, their life journey. Leave no part of themselves behind, because you don't have to. I think more and more in this corporate dominant world that is only about profit and definitely about silencing dissenting voices, I think it's more important to definitely say all that you want to say. Do not hide anything. We don't have to hide. We don't have to. They want us to hide, but we don't have to hide.
Okay, now we're going to go to segment 3, art practice and fashion design. Your creative practice spans visual art and fashion design. How do these different disciplines inform each other in your work?
So I was out of high school. I went to fashion design school in Los Angeles. I wasn't really thinking about the visual arts. The only visual arts that I grew up with in our house was a velvet painting of JFK, which I loved. And also we had crosses in our house, devout Catholics. My mother, not my father. And also my grandmother, but not my grandfather. But my grandmother, Eulalia, was a evangelista, eventually. So the world of fashion design in Los Angeles, again, we're talking about the child of farm workers, insecure, poor, working class, around lots of other students who have lots of more experience in the world, lots more money. But I did it. I did my training, and I worked in the fashion world for 15 years. A huge influence on me. And I would say the biggest influence was because I traveled. I had never traveled outside of the country before. So I get a job, 21, 23, I think, and I'm being sent to Europe, which I had never been to. I am being sent to Hong Kong, to India. Seeing the world really opened up my eyes. And I know that sounds cliche, but I really didn't ever see myself, this poor kid from Oxnard, moving around the world. And suddenly here I am in Paris, I'm in London, I'm in Milan, Firenze, I'm in Hong Kong. It was an amazing exposure, but it was also an amazing confidence boost to say, part of me doesn't belong here, but I am here. But I am here. So open up and take it all in. So that world of fashion design, being able to have that experience and also working, with companies was a big boost for my confidence level. And then also there is where I begin to see art that I did not study in high school.
So that's how that is how that is how you began to become attracted to the artistic medium?
Yeah, because I went there and I saw a Vincent van Gogh exhibit, which I had heard about, but didn't really know anything about his life or his art. By this time, I'm working as a fashion designer, fabrics, colors. And then while I'm in Paris looking at art, which I had never done as a child, it again just opens up the world in ways that I never dreamed of. And I like that word, dreamed, because I think dreams are important, but I also think, how do you make those dreams come true? A lot of work, a lot of help, and I think talking about them is how to make those dreams come true. Talk about them, put into the world, and then move towards them. So seeing the work of Vincent van Gogh, then I begin to look at him and I begin to study him, and then I begin to think, oh, I want to study more about this.
And do you see fashion as another form of cultural storytelling or political expression?
I do, only because when I worked in Hong Kong, I was working with factories. So I worked with the people, and I taught myself to sew when I was 12 years old. So I visited factories. So I got to see all the people who were making my garments for very little money, where those fabrics come from, who makes them. All of that for me is extremely important. And a lot of the stuff that goes into making fabrics is quite toxic, especially with denim. That whole indigo, all of that is not good for the planet. So making garments that are sustainable, all of that for me, where they're made, not made much in this country, in places other than this country where labor is very, very cheap. So I think we're talking about labor and class and who gets to profit off of people's labor.
So, how do materials, textiles, and design choices help communicate identity and cultural symbolism in your work?
I would say velvet is probably the biggest one, because I remember as a child loving that painting of JFK on velvet. When I went to art school, I heard about those Mexican paintings on velvet. And I went, oh, what's going on here? So then all of a sudden I realized, wow, class and prejudice and racism is even in the world of fabric choices. Oh, yes. So that was really interesting to me, because I had obviously not thought about that as a child, but I liked the fact that it just made me want to talk about all of those choices, aesthetics, how cultures, how we all use color, fabrics in very different ways. That's part of the conversation that I love also, that I would pass on to younger artists too. Don't be afraid to talk about all of it. All of it. Because I know it is in my choices. When I choose colors, I get told this a lot. Oh, you're so good with those bright colors. And I go, yeah, Vincent van Gogh was too. Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to segment 4, role as professor and mentor. Eugene, you've also spent many years as an art professor. What does teaching mean to you?
So I have to start off with a story that is, I never dreamed of being a teacher. I had a friend who died of AIDS in the 80s, Matthew Bixler. He was teaching fashion design down in Los Angeles when I lived there. I had a house. I was recently fired from my job, had my first mortgage, and I had $13 in the bank. And I was freaking out. And he said, do you want to teach a class? You can teach fashion. And I thought, why not? I'm a fashion designer. So I took the class only because I needed money. And the first day that I walked in and started teaching, I fell in love. I went, wow, I love this. So I decided, because I only had my AA in fashion design when I was a fashion designer. So after that experience, I said, I want to go back to school and get my bachelor's and my master's with the intent of teaching. Teaching has taught me, I taught for 40 years, an amazing experience. It taught me humility. It taught me research and development, obviously, and reading and being able to put together a curriculum. And I also wanted to teach in a different way than I was taught, especially in my undergrad, because there was still a lot of prejudice against working class people, against Latinos, Chicanos, Asian American, African American women. There was a lot of prejudice that I saw when I was in my undergrad. I had a lot of arguments and fights with some of my professors, particularly men, about all of this. So teaching really, really, again, opened my eyes and helped me see, wow, I can say a lot with teaching. I can do a lot, can't I? Wow. I can teach in a different way than I was taught. So that was a big deal for me. Yeah.
Wow. And how has working with young artists influenced your own creative practice?
I have to say that a lot of my students brought work to me that I wasn't prepared to talk about, and so I had to listen. So I think teaching taught me definitely how to listen, and also to acknowledge my prejudices about the work that they were bringing, and relax, acknowledge my judgments, my prejudice, and ask questions. I don't really understand this work. Where is it coming from? So I got to learn about people's like my own, which I wish had been asked of me when I was learning. Where I don't understand. Tell me, just where is this coming from? I would have been able to answer that question. I might have been shy or maybe a bit with shame, but at least I would have been able to begin a conversation. So having that experience as a child and as a young adult in school later on taught me to do it differently with my young people, because I could feel them wanting to learn, and they weren't quite sure, like myself, did I fit into this arena of art making? So it definitely taught me how to listen. Yeah.
What do you see in the current generation of artists that gives you hope for the future of Chicano art?
I would say probably being able to use all of it that is coming into, I would say, view with caution. I have a caveat here. The world of music, the world of singing, the world of fashion, put it all into your practice if that's where you are, if that's who you are, but yet acknowledge that the culture that we're living in right now is extremely corporate and is extremely about making profit at all costs. That's dangerous, because I think that can have us have those arguments with ourselves to say, I think I'm being honest with myself in what I'm doing when possibly you're not. But I just want to be part of the zeitgeist. The zeitgeist right now, the mainstream is pretty polluted, pretty toxic. So we need to be careful about what we're looking at. And I think that's we can do that. I think the conversation is extremely important about where young artists are getting inspiration from and where they want to fit into this crazy milieu right now that we're living in. Quite dangerous.
We are living in dangerous times. And what advice do you give students who are trying to find their voice as artists today?
I would say read as much as you can. History, visual history, film history, fashion history from multiple perspectives. The one thing that I learned in graduate school is that never come to me as an instructor with one idea or one book or one article. I want 3, at least 5 ideas, and I would always recommend read, and expose them to multiple artists who are possibly, if you're a painter, aren't painters. What about filmmakers? What about performance? What about ballet? What about dance, song composition, all of that? Study it all, read, and then read more.
Segment 5, upcoming museum exhibition. Eugene, you have an upcoming museum exhibition. Congratulations. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. I'm extremely excited. It's my first solo museum exhibition down in Southern California, Museum of Art and History in Lancaster. It came about during the pandemic when many of us, I just stopped making art. And I read a lot. I watched a lot of movies. Obviously took walks with masks on, but it gave me a chance to stop and kind of think, where do I want to go? Because what if I die? What will I leave behind? That part of me was thinking. So I sketched a lot into my notebook, and I just called it my Velvet Notebooks. So the exhibit is called Velvet Notes, Conversando con Pedro Guzman, my grandfather. It did not start out that way. It really started out as kind of put all the ideas that were in that sketchbook and just make them. But then I went to a residency, an artist workshop, a weekend workshop where I was able to meet with curators, gallerists, writers, and talk about the ideas. So I had this notebook, and I just thought, well, I'll just talk about all the ideas in this notebook because this is about feedback. And at the end of the weekend, which was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the final critic was the director of the museum where I'm going to have the exhibit, Andy Campagnone, and she offered me an exhibit. And I was really quite surprised because that wasn't the goal. It was supposed to be of the weekend. And then I realized, well, now I have to make all this work. So some of it was completely foreign to me. I had never done ceramics. I was versed a little in printmaking, but I just thought this is a chance that I really wanted to grow and expand what I was doing. Not only with the technical part, but I also wanted to explore other ways of being an artist, because I was still holding on to that graduate school idea, which for me at that time now had become toxic, and I needed to cleanse myself. So I just jumped into all these ideas. It is now a conversation about media representation, Latinos, Chicanos, artists, singers, the world of corporate art making, and it's also about a talk show with my grandfather, Pedro Guzman, whom I miss, I grew up with, and we lived in his house, their house. It wasn't our house that I thought as a child. It was my grandparents. So this is my way of carrying on the conversation and sharing with them, my ancestors, about what their grandson is doing.
How beautiful that you could use art to talk about history and to talk to your ancestors. It's a way I imagine it brought you closer.
Definitely. And I'm still going through it right now, because it didn't start off that way. My co-producer, Angel Vasquez, kind of asked me to kind of think about who else. I play multiple roles in the film. I play a character named Rudy Warhol, who is a takeoff of Andy Warhol, and the whole idea of, the factory and just cranking out art, corporate art, clientele, etc. But then having him ask me about who is this talk show host, I decided to put my grandfather in there, because like you said, I think I was yearning for a way to have the conversation, especially in the times that we're living, when it seems so fashionable to just say, my art comes out of my ombligo, I'm navel gazing. And I don't feel that. I feel I needed to connect. And then I have to say, meeting you at the center was a big part of that impetus to kind of want to make a different type of art that was really from where I am, who I am, not from the world telling me this is what you make. You were a huge influence, Martina.
Thank you. Well, I saw your work and I'm like, oh, we need to bring him close to community here and have him share all this. And as you share, every time so Eugene and I collaborated and worked together at the Mission Cultural Center for Latino Arts. And I met you there when you were printmaking. And then, of course, we curated one of your shows. But then later on, you became an instructor at the center. And most notable was when you were doing our sip and paints, and how you were able to get people from all walks of life with no experience to really be present in the moment and create from the heart. And these were not your typical sip and paints where everybody paints the same portrait. We were exploring a theme, a general theme, but everyone interpreted in their own way. And it was because of your guidance that we were able to express from our soul.
That was a big, big learning experience for me. And it was probably transformational for me, because I had never done that. And I think I remember asking you the first time I came in, like, what am I supposed to do? Because I was quite comfortable in the classroom, right, where it's my curriculum. I have goals by the end of these 3 weeks for painting, etc. I push you along, I challenge you, I see you, I critique. But this was not that. And I love a challenge, and I'm at this point when you're asking me, like, I really need to grow. I need to get out of this shell that I think I've been hiding in. So I really talked to the gods and chanted a lot. And I thought, I can do this, but you're going to have to do it differently. And as soon as I walked in, I could feel an old me in conversation with a new me. And it was really good for me, because the new me said, just try something different. You said you want to just go with it. And it was so amazing, because I really felt the shell of the old me fall away. And it was really quite liberating that I'm going to say this as a teacher of 40 years, I could even have fun.
Oh, yes. And it was great to see that evolution, because every single session we had was better and better. And then I'm like, you're a fashion designer. Why not teach sewing as well? And you're like, okay. And you went in there, and again, you taught people from different ages, backgrounds, and no experience. And you allowed everyone to cut loose. I mean, you as you were experiencing that freedom of expression and learning and creating a safe space for others to learn and just explore and have fun.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole purpose. Yeah. It's not about a grade. It's not about, it's about, it's self-expression and it's therapeutic.
Yeah.
You're doing it for you.
Yeah.
No other reason than for you.
And I really liked, I really felt because it was the cultural center, and I had never worked in a cultural center. Obviously, I had done printing for my exhibit, but I had never worked in one, and I really liked the feeling, the environment that it's very different than an academic setting, which I feel sometimes can be very uptight. And I think some of the young people that I was teaching did feel a bit uncomfortable in that sense. I know I felt uncomfortable, but I'm the first of my family to go to college, graduate with a master's degree. It felt really awkward at times, like I didn't belong there, and I didn't want that feeling anymore. So I think doing the sip and paint really told me and confronted myself saying, you said you didn't want this anymore, then let it go. Let it go. And I did, and it was like very, very liberating.
And it was interesting because it also coincided with your retirement.
Yeah, definitely.
From teaching.
Yeah.
And there's lifelong learners and there's lifelong teachers, and you continue to evolve and grow and expand and discover new ways of mentoring and supporting others. What are there any particular works in the show that hold special meaning for you?
I would say I love all of the challenges. I have some soft sculpture. I have some large furry dice that I remember because we had them in the sip and paint. But the actual memory comes from my older brother, who died when I was 13. He died when I was 11 and he was 23. My hero. He broke my heart. In his first car in high school, he had furry dice hanging from the mirror in his car. And I just remember them being like, thinking, I want to be like him. He's so cool. He has furry dice. So now I get to have furry dice. So I think those carry, this is something that's really important that I'm going to pass on later on that I learned through all of this. The work that I make, because I have an academic training of how to make art, how to sew, how to know fabrics, which I love all of that. But I would say with this exhibit, it let me make the things, create art from my definition of what art is without having to ask for permission. Also knowing that some people may not like it. I'm hoping they would ask questions so we can talk about it. That's where I think for me, I have learned from being with you at the center is that it's a constant communication. It's a dialogue. And I think that's something that this country is hurting from, is that we no longer talk to each other because we are afraid of each other. I'm afraid to ask you, what does this have anything to do with your being Chicano? And I don't really know what a Chicano is. Well, then just ask me. But we are so afraid of being wrong or of being called a racist. And that whole idea of communication, which I think is my pivotal tool in all of my art making, is where all of my art comes from now. There's also a painting that is of my brother and my father. My brother died when I was 11 and my father committed suicide when I was 13. Two broken hearts in 2 years was devastating. I had a nervous breakdown when my father died, and that painting is crucial. And fortunately, fortunately, but miraculously, they're going to blow that painting up to be a mural size of 25 feet by 25 feet when you enter the museum. So that's, a call from the gods to say, yeah, keep doing it. So
move forward.
Yeah.
So what do you hope visitors will experience or reflect on when they see this exhibition?
What I'm hoping is something that I wish I had learned more from going to art school in undergrad and more in graduate school too. Is that I'm just a curious person, and I love from that, like I told you, finger painting in kindergarten. From that moment, I just loved making things of different genres, disciplines, to use an academic term. But there's so much different work in the show. There's the costumes that I have designed. There's sculpture, there's ceramics, there's large puppets, there's film, there's paintings, there's prints. I think I would just hope that people would ask questions about where all of it came from and how is it that you make all this kind of work? And I think for me, I would say curiosity. Stay curious and stay hungry, which was something that I try to do. Always evolving.
Always evolve. And I think when you keep that childlike mind, that curiosity.
You said it. I definitely, a lot of the work comes from that childlike curiosity of the magic of art making.
The wonder.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
That's what kind of guides your spirit.
Definitely.
Which takes me to segment 6, artist statement. For listeners who may not know your work, how would you describe your artist statement?
I would say I am a Chicano artist from Oxnard, California, currently living and making work in San Francisco. And I would say probably all of my work is really about representation. We live with so many images, and I grew up watching TV. There's a paper mache sculpture of myself as a boy watching TV, and I have TV bug eyes with the color bars on the painting in front of me, and also as eyes now, kind of like a fly. And I think that says to me, we need to stop and take a look at what all these images really represent. Because I would say in this current moment that we're living in, image is all about profit, and it's also about addiction. And I think those two things are very, very damaging. When you're only looking at making money and you're only looking about addicting children to watching this to make money, that's sinister. So I would say all of my work really is about critical thinking about the images that we are looking at, because they aren't just images. Images have to be made by someone and for something, for some purpose. So that's probably what all of my work is, even if it's sculpture, paintings, films. And then also I would say who is making art and where is it coming from regarding class, gender, ethnicity. I would say even at this point, nation state, who gets to participate in this thing called art making in the art world. It's pretty narrow, I think.
So now we go to segment 7, art, memory, and cultural preservation. One of the goals of this podcast is to document and preserve cultural memory. How do you see your work contributing to the preservation of Chicano cultural history?
I would say that from the beginnings of my life, since I am the child of sharecroppers in the fields working in strawberries, that's a big part of my formation of where I come from. All 4 of my grandparents came from Mexico. That's a big part of where I came from as well. My grandfather, Pedro Guzman, worked on the railroads during the Porfiriato. Porfirio Diaz, the benevolent dictator of Mexico, for quite a lot of years. When that work finished, I don't know if people know that history, when that project finished building those railroads for Mexico, he and his brothers, Toribio, Dionisio, all moved north for more work, and they ended up working on the railroads again in Chicago, made money, and then they came out west and then bought a farm in Modesto, Riverbank. So I think for me, cultural memory, all of that is part of me. It also preserves that story, and I think stories, that's what we live with, right? Our lives are not stories. Our lives are lived experiences, but then how we tell those stories, I think, are extremely powerful. Whose stories are not told, I think, is extremely important. Who's and who's not, and why. So I think for me, being able to tell that story, and everybody's story is different, I understand, but I think that's where a large formation of me comes from, that milieu, that environment, 60s, a working class family striving to be middle class, and then also then being an artist, and then also finding that like I said, those prejudices, those all that stuff continues. So I think that whole journey is important. So tell your journey, and also as it develops and changes, tell that story.
When I see your work, I see all of the themes that you have talked about represented, but it's also a history lesson. You having grown up in the 60s and 70s, I could relate to a lot of the political figures. I could relate to a lot of the nuances and imagery that you include in your paintings. And I really appreciate that, because not only are you documenting your experience, you're documenting your experience within a historical, political, and social context. And for those of us that have lived through that, we could relate to that. And for the new generations, it brings up questions that helps us. It's an opportunity to learn about history and its impact on individuals and their experiences. How does your work speak to the present moment, socially, culturally, politically?
I would say telling that story that I just relayed about my background, being working class in Oxnard, striving to be middle class, is important to what I'm saying now. I would also say that because I'm a filmmaker, that whole world also, with the Allison family wanting to buy Warner Brothers, and we know that is all about who gets to shape narrative and what stories are being told, and how those images affect all of us and what we see. Being a filmmaker, I have no desires to work in Hollywood, but being able to be an indie filmmaker, I think that's where I get to tell stories that I think need to be seen, and how they're made, the editing process, all of it, the actors chosen, the script. I'm reading a lot right now about the life of Pier Paolo Pasolini, the Italian filmmaker, extremely prolific, essay writer, painter, and filmmaker. So I think I've been making film, and then now I'm moving into working on the world of stage and theater. I think just being able to present stories for me right now is what is important, those narratives.
And what do you hope future generations will understand about this time through your work?
I love working with my hands, and I also have discovered that I love working with people, something that I didn't like to do when I was much younger and very insecure and shy and frightened of the world. I understand now that working with people, I love that exchange of ideas. Obviously, you have to find people that you're comfortable with, but once you find them, never let them go. They push you, they help you to grow. We all need feedback, someone that we can trust to bounce off ideas. I would say just put all of it. I can't remember the exact question that you were asking, but I think what do you hope that generations will understand about this time through your work? I think talk about your moment. The moment that we're living in, I think is extremely, extremely tumultuous, and important that we talk about what we are living through. I know that many of us human beings have trouble with the world that we're living in. And rightly so. It is extremely frightening, the killing of children in Palestine by governments of Israel and this government funding them. I think we can't walk away from that, and that's hard to talk about. But I think those ideas, however you put that into form as an artist, because it doesn't have to be an overt political statement. I'm not saying that, but don't shy away from the moment that we are living in.
Speaking about the reality that we are experiencing
Definitely.
through art. Segment 8. Reflection and legacy. Looking back on your journey, what moments were the most transformative for you as an artist?
I can say without a doubt now that it is the people that I have met along the way. Teachers, Sherry Ricidi at San Francisco State, Leonard Hunter at San Francisco State, later on Moira Roth at my graduate studies, meeting you, Amalia Mesa Baines, being able to talk to Guillermo Gomez Pena, the people along the way that I have met, Angel Vasquez, my co-producer, who makes everything I do better. Lisa Zagone, who I'm working with in terms of making puppets. All the people that I've met along the way are really who have supported me, the conversations, all of that I think is really important. And that's community. I understand now that's vital to us as human beings. We are social animals. You cannot live without other people. And I think the culture we're living in today tells just the opposite, and it's a lie, that you can live all alone with your screen. You can't.
Things make much more sense when we share them with people and when we interact with others and get that
Definitely.
feedback. Otherwise, we're just stuck in our heads.
Yeah.
And what keeps you inspired today?
I think I read a lot from many, many different perspectives all over the world, not just this country. Reading novels, nonfiction from Latin America, from Europe, from France, Italy, critics, novelists. That keeps me inspired. And then the conversations along the way with friends and family.
And what legacy do you hope your work will leave within the Chicano art history and within the LGBTQ community?
I'm going to try and be as humble as I can here, but I would hope, because I'm having that experience right now. When I did all those sketches in my velvet notebooks during the pandemic, I did think about possibly my death, because I could have died, right? Had I caught the virus. I remember talking to someone after this. I hope to leave, and I hope it comes through, that I cared. I cared about humanity.
Eugene, thank you for sharing your journey, your reflections, and your artistry with us today. Your work reminds us that art is more than an object. It is a living archive of culture, identity, and community memory. To our listeners, if you want to learn more about Eugene Rodriguez and his upcoming exhibition, we'll include links and information in the episode description. Thank you for joining us in the first episode of Aqui, Alla, Here and There. I'm Dr. Martina Ayala, and this podcast is dedicated to celebrating, preserving, and elevating the voices of Mexican and Chicano artists whose work shapes our cultural future. Thank you for joining us for the premiere episode of Aqui y Allá podcast, a space where art, memory, migration, identity, and cultural preservation come together across borders. If today's conversation resonates with you, we invite you to help us grow this community. Please take a moment to follow, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends, family, colleagues, artists, educators, and anyone invested in culture, storytelling, and the preservation of our collective histories. You can also support the podcast by visiting our website at aquiyallapodcast.com and joining our mailing list to stay connected to upcoming episodes, artist interviews, exhibitions, cultural events, and special projects. We are currently seeking cultural partners, collaborators, sponsors, and artists who believe in the power of storytelling, archives, and community-centered cultural work. If that's you, we would love to hear from you. Follow us on Instagram at Aqui y Allá, Here and There, and continue the conversation with us online. Until next time, remember, our stories matter, our histories matter, and no matter where we are in the world, we carry culture with us. Aquí y allá, here and there, across borders, across memory, across generations.